back to our series of interviews with Euros members and colleagues around the world. I'm delighted to introduce you to Priscilla Montana and Danielle Wise from Cultural Awareness International. We've known each other, Priscilla, for many years. It's lovely to see you. I can't believe we didn't get to see each other last week in Seville.
I know. Thank you, Dom.
Listen,
Thank you for inviting us.
It's my pleasure. It's lovely to catch up with you both. So listen, you are in Texas. Can you tell us what the situation is right now in Texas and in the wider United States?
Sure. I think I'll let Danielle answer that question. We were just talking about that. We're in Dallas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are in Dallas, and you know, in the U.S., the states are kind of making some of their own decisions about reopening. So May 1st, Governor Abbott said that restaurants could reopen at a 25% capacity. Some restaurants have done that, and some have chosen not to because their staff may not feel comfortable. Last week, I think hair salons, nail salons, barbershops were able to open. And then on Monday, May 18th, gyms can open. And this is all, you know, they want you to do the guidelines, wear the masks. So I think people are a little excited about that in the sense that they can get out a little bit. But then there's a lot of people who are still very cautious and at home. So, and again, schools, just like I think throughout the U.S., have been closed. And they'll remain closed for this school year, and then the fall, you know, they're looking at different ways to adapt.
Right.
So yeah.
And you know, as you know, Dom, the U.S. is very decentralized. So what the president says is kind of under a large. Each state can decide what they want to do, and then each city or mayor of each city or town can put in their input. So there are a lot of different rules that are going around, a lot of inconsistencies, and one of the challenges is that, you know, people do need to get out and earn a living. People are on food lines and trying to, you know, have enough money to feed their families and so forth. But the other side of that is that the numbers keep going up in terms of contagion and deaths from the COVID-19. So it's still pretty worrisome and really difficult to assess what to do.
It's a really interesting situation in the US, given that, you know, you have got such decentralized government. And does that, I mean, for example, you said people are feeling a little bit more positive in Texas. You know, certain things are starting to open, but at the same time, the curve is still rising.
And across the U.S., I haven't seen today's numbers, but yesterday across the U.S., the numbers had gone down to up to over 80,000 deaths, and may have peaked in Texas a few days ago, but that remains to be seen. There are a lot of cases that have been found in nursing homes and areas where, well, and also the meatpacking facilities, which was a huge shock, in places like South Dakota and Nebraska, and areas that were not very badly hit at first, and now they're finding thousands of people that have been tested positive. So that's causing a lot of new concerns.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, from that point of view, you mentioned the T word, testing. Is testing widely available? You said in, you know, the meatpacking industry, suddenly there was a flare.
Well, I don't remember how actually they found out about the meatpacking. I think maybe there was an individual that wasn't feeling well and he tested positive. He or she, I can't remember if it was a man or a woman, and they decided to go in and test some other folks, and a large number of people tested positive. But you know, one of the challenges with this, my son is an ER doctor actually, and he's on the front lines every day, and he's very concerned because he says that you could be totally asymptomatic. A fever does not necessarily exist if you have it, and you could be totally asymptomatic, which many children are, and the parents and other folks don't know about that, and still have it. And that's what happened in some of these nursing homes and meatpacking facilities. So it's really scary, to be honest. You don't know if somebody's you're walking next to in the street, you know, and a lot of people are not. One of the challenges is that when they've opened things up, I think people were so relieved that they felt, okay, so things are getting better. And many people are disregarding some of the safety guidelines, not wearing masks, sitting too close together. And the concern is that we may have another wave.
And certainly the very same concerns in Europe. But I mean, my goodness, that I'm talking to the right people. You know, cultural awareness.
I don't know about that.
Cultural awareness. You know, your operation was built on understanding, you know, differences in intercultural approaches to things. And we're actually about to undertake a little piece of research about how different cultures put different rules in place, and you know, how they're managing those risks. I mean, when you look at the US, and obviously I know you work all over the world, but you also work in South America specifically. In the United States, where you've seen people's desperation to get back to work, protests, you know, people, how cultural do you think that is? Is that because it's such an individualistic culture?
I think to some extent it is. Danny, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think so. And I also think, you know, because we are decentralized, it shows kind of our individualism, that each states are doing their own. And if you look at more collective cultures, it's a little different and more as the whole, or kind of what's best for the nation or the larger group. But we are very individualistic. So I think that definitely is, you know, impacting people's drive to also go back to work and help themselves.
Yeah, there have been a lot of demonstrations because people saying, you know, the government can't tell us what to do, or the president shouldn't have the right to dictate in our town. You know, everybody wants to have the freedom to determine by themselves or for themselves and their family what are the next steps. Unfortunately, those decisions are not always the wisest ones. So it creates, you know, some concern and inconsistency.
I mean, that is the thing, is that I know certainly from the conversations that have been happening with people all over the world, there is that huge distinction between, I will take that risk. It is my right to take that risk. I'll take the risk until I get it. But the collective thing is then you increase the R rate and you have a responsibility to the rest of society. It is fascinating. So tell me from this point of view, I mean, I know your operations are split. You know, you do intercultural and obviously you're doing relocation services.
Yes, and some language training as well.
Language too. Tell me how you have transitioned during this bizarre period.
Well, we're offering a great deal of virtual services. We already had, before the pandemic, virtual support programs in both the intercultural area and destination services. Needless to say, we've expanded that, whereby we are providing as much as we can without face-to-face contact. In some areas that have opened up, we're starting to do a little bit of face-to-face in terms of the destination services, but you know, the consultant will go in a separate car, they will wear masks and gloves, we have them sign a waiver to make sure they're comfortable, but 99% of the time we're still not providing face-to-face services. So we are still getting some assignments, and therefore things like lease renewals and departure and disconnects and some other basic services that we can accomplish virtually. And for intercultural, we're doing a lot of webinars and other programs. Danny, why don't you explain a little bit about what we're doing with that?
Sure. So we've done a lot of virtual training before this, and now all of our training is virtual. And we are seeing, you know, people are kind of still yearning for that connection. So a lot of assignees are taking advantage of the training. They may have already relocated to a new city or country, and they want to speak to an intercultural facilitator who can kind of give them, you know, coping strategies, as well as understand the situation from the cultural view, but also just somebody to connect with and kind of to be a kind of cultural confidant, if you will. So we have seen that. A lot of people are wanting to make those connections. We deliver the programs kind of in virtual modules. And that's worked really well. So, you know, I think it's great because in our business, we really want to support people. So it's been great that we've been still able to do that, and they connect with somebody local, but, you know, obviously in a virtual capacity. So it's been good.
Now more than ever, if that was me, I had just arrived somewhere on assignment in UK, Germany,
exactly.
I would want to know how this culture is dealing with this, how I should fit with that. I think that's so valuable.
Right.
Yeah. And just to connect with somebody local, you know, I think that's
Exactly.
the key too. You know, they haven't had a chance to network. So, you know, we try to give them some suggestions. Some of the local chambers will have, you know, little virtual coffee things for newcomers, but we try to give them some suggestions and also help them with some of the understanding some of the business practices as well, and just even, you know, kind of communicating and building those relationships from a virtual capacity. So it's been nice to see that we've able to offer that.
I mean, everybody that I've spoken to, and I've asked the question, and I'll ask it to you too, you know, how are your teams and how are they staying positive? One of the responses that I've had is to feel useful, to feel that you're doing something good for the people who are our clients. And like I say, right now, if I was in, you know, in transition, I would want cultural advice.
Right. Right.
So how are your teams coping, and how, you know, how's the positivity levels?
I think they're doing pretty well. I try to touch base with each person, you know, every week or two and check in with them. I think for the most part, I've been doing some polling to determine if and when we're going to go back to the office. They're all very comfortable working from home. I think they would prefer to continue to work from home for a while, if not indefinitely, because on the practical side, it saves long commutes and it makes things easier. But also, there's still a lot of uncertainty. I know that, you know, half a dozen of them told me just last week that, you know, they're still not comfortable with going out and going to the office and dealing with, you know, all the things that we're going to have to deal with. Even if we, you know, we set things up so there's 6 feet apart and take temperatures and wear masks, there's always still an element of danger, if you will, or uncertainty that makes them uneasy. So, you know, we try to have, we have weekly staff meetings. We chit chat about what we're doing, brainstorm about ideas. We've always celebrated anniversaries. So, you know, 1, 3, and 5 year anniversaries. We have Employee of the Quarter. We just had one win that award last week. And we try to really kind of maintain the same type of, if not momentum, at least traditions that we've had before, so that everybody can keep going. I think some people are seeing each other outside of work still by, you know, maybe taking walks together if they live close together or in the same neighborhood. So they're also staying connected in other ways. But right now, everybody's very happy to be at home and not be asked to come back to the office, and I think that really helps make them feel more secure.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I mean, certainly from our point of view at the beginning of this, and it's surreal that this has now been going on for, you know,
Exactly.
weeks. At the beginning, we were like, oh, we really want to be back in the office. We were really physically missing that connection. And then
Right.
we went to it. And now we're kind of going, yeah, like you, I quite like working from home. I wanted to just ask as well, I mean, if you're taking just one city, Dallas, you know, as a city, I'm assuming is a car-based city. It's a big spread out.
Very much so.
The issues with commuting are not nearly as big a deal as they would be Chicago, New York, San Francisco. Does that help in some way, that you can get in your car and you are more secure?
Well, to some extent, but then I think part of the issue is, where are you going to go? Where are you going to feel secure, and where you want to be? Yeah. So, you know, the same thing about restaurants and beauty parlors and barbershops. I mean, all along, people have used takeout service, takeaway, as you call it, for food, and people have been very comfortable. At first, there was some hesitancy whether it was safe to buy food in restaurants and have it delivered or pick it up, but it seems to be okay. So that's worked well, and it's helped the restaurant industry, which in many ways it's going under, because you know, there are thousands and tens of thousands of restaurants all over the country and in Dallas and Texas. But I think people are just trying to be extra cautious, and they don't really, from what I understand, at least our team, they're very careful about going out and not doing anything that isn't totally essential. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah. Do you think the same?
No, I agree. You know, I think because we do global services, a couple of us with small children, such as myself, you know, they've rotated schedules with their significant other so that they can, you know, maybe watch the kids in the day and they work in the evening. And so we really are looking at each employee's personal situation and trying to support them the best that we can. Because it is really difficult, I think, you know, with children, and then I think it's also difficult when, you know, you're by yourself, and so wanting to stay connected a little bit more to those individuals as well. to help with that kind of positive attitude. But, you know, we have our staff meetings, we have our individual department meetings. We're talking to each other daily. And just trying to stay connected. I think a lot of people are thinking outside the box. They really want to help thrive and not just survive during this. And so that's been really nice to see the different employees kind of having different ideas because we really most of us have all lived and worked abroad and really understand the cultural impact. And so we want to continue to provide that, even though it's in a virtual capacity.
And provide as much support as we can for anybody and everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like I say, right now, your service is so valuable. I just wanted to ask you about whether or not, as a company, you know, you're a large company, whether you have access to any financial assistance right now, and whether that's happening on a federal or a national level.
Well, the government, the federal government passed the Payroll Protection Program back in March, which is essentially a program that you could apply for if you were, quote unquote, a small business. Now, small business in this situation was employees, companies with, I think, 500 employees or less. Well, okay. That's quite a large organization. And, you know, and it caused some issues because they were restaurant chains that applied and received those funds, and actually then they turned around and returned them because there was a lot of backlash about it because they received millions. But essentially we did apply for that and we did receive it earlier in April, and what it does is provide salaries and rent and utility funding for 8 weeks.
Okay.
So that money, you applied for that through your bank, and that money, once you were approved, it was deposited. Now, it's technically a loan,
right,
but you can ask for it to be forgiven if you meet certain guidelines. Those guidelines are a little bit under discussion because some people feel they're not fair, and there are a lot of nuances to it that have not yet been completely clarified. But many organizations have applied for that, and that certainly helps to cover a couple of months. But, you know, in our situation, that gives us some funding till approximately the middle of June. And given that I think most people thought that by early summer things would be a lot better, and they probably will not be. You know, the challenge is how do you keep going to make sure that you can roll out whatever you need to roll out, and certainly keep our employees, because you know, my goal is to keep everybody on staff if at all possible. So
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's just been so interesting talking to, you know, the Euro members across the world about how, you know, obviously when I first started talking to Denmark, our colleagues in Denmark and Sweden, and huge social programs rolled out immediately, and then the UK a little bit slower to catch up. You know, Italy not so fast as well. But it is good to hear that there are at least things in place, because that when this first happened, I know talking to our colleagues on the Euroboard, there was just that total frozen fear.
Exactly. You know, there are just a lot of things. We have a beautiful office that we're paying rent on, but it's been empty now for almost 3 months. So, you know, there are a lot of things that go through your head and try to figure out, okay, what does this mean? Do I get out of my lease? Do I go back to the office? You know, there are just so many unknowns, and everything is on hold. So
yeah, and I mean, you know, I love the fact that everyone I've spoken to, you as well, you know, we're an industry that thrives on planning. You know, everything we do is based on planning, and suddenly we're in a situation where we can't plan anything. It's uncomfortable.
Exactly, very uncomfortable. We don't know, and that's what I tell everyone when we have our weekly staff meetings. You know, sometimes they ask, sometimes they don't, but I say, you know, we're literally going week by week. I can't make any promises, I can't make any plans, so just bear with us and we'll do what's best. But also, if anybody is uncomfortable and we decide to go back later this summer, if they prefer not to, we're certainly going to, you know, agree to let them do what's best for them, because we don't want to take any risks or make anyone uncomfortable or put them in any danger. That's paramount.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting how, I mean, we released last week a kind of just a basic document for Euro members, like, you know, this is best practice right now in terms of legal hiring, what you're going to do with people, how, like you said about going in separate cars if you were doing you know, some DSP work, because I mean, we all have to figure this out, and no one is there with a manual saying,
Right.
go back to work.
Exactly.
So,
Right. And it changes, constantly changes.
yeah.
Because they don't even know, the scientists are not sure. One week it's, yeah, you need to wear gloves, but a mask is really not that important. Now the gloves are not that good, that necessary, but a mask is really important.
Yeah.
So, you know, it changes periodically and it's hard to keep up sometimes.
It is. It's very hard to keep up indeed. And speaking of keeping up, I would love to come back to you in a month or so and do this again and see where we are by then, because like you say, it's a very fast moving situation. And at the moment, it feels like we're sort of in this period of inertia. There's not enough movement happening quickly.
Total limbo.
Yeah, it's really strange.
Well, it'll be interesting with all the kind of small openings in Texas in a month or so to see kind of what that resulted in, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, it could have an impact. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
I think it's the same. It would be, you know, by the time we come to a month, you know, Sweden, that experiment of herd immunity, will know a lot more about that. Denmark has come back this week to a huge amount of, you know, schools are back, and the same in Germany. So, you know, we're in a very big learning curve.
Right. And in Asia, they've gone back and some of them are starting to have more cases again. I mean, it's really sad.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky to negotiate. But thank you so much, Priscilla, Danielle. It's really lovely to see you. We'll rebook for beginning mid-June.
Definitely.
That would be great.
Definitely.
In the meantime, our very best to all of your teams, to both of you. Stay well and stay safe. Lovely.
Yes, stay healthy.
Thank you, Dom. It was a pleasure. Thank you for thinking of us. Stay well.
Lovely to
Take
see you.
care.
Take care. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.